Alright, how we doing? I'm going to do a quick overview of the Greeks. It's the same stuff we did in class to help you fill in your notes, especially if you were absent, or to help you review. So, this is covering the Greeks. Before we do that, I want to go through a few pronunciations. First of all, we have something called an acropolis. An acropolis is spelled like it's in the yellow box, and it's pronounced like it's on the left. We have something called a polis, which we'll explain in just a second, and an agora, which we will study in just a second as well. So we have acropolis at the top, polis in the middle, and agora at the bottom. Moving on, the city-states is the title of this section. City-states covers from about 700 BC to 335 BC. 700 BC to 335 BC. First thing we're going to do is study something called the polis, and that was one of the words we just pronounced. Polis is one of those words that you've seen before. Usually it comes at the end of a word. And if you think about some cities where you've seen the word polis in it, like Minneapolis, or Indianapolis, or Annapolis, which is the capital of Maryland, you might put together that polis means city. That polis means city. In ancient Greek times, we're going to call it city-states. In ancient Greek times, we're going to call it city-states. And it was the center of Greek life. Polis was the center of Greek life. It started as an acropolis, or a fortified hill. So the word acropolis means fortified hill. Now, fortified hill is kind of a complicated word. I would just say that it's a hill. So there were cities that were on top of hills. Those were called acropolis. And they had a few villages, and the villages also had farms outside. In the middle of the acropolis was a temple to the local god. This was on the top of the hill. So each polis had its own local god, and there was a temple for that god on the top of the hill. Finally, new word, they had an agora, which is a marketplace where there was lots of trading, and if you're in the classroom and you look above the smartboard, there's a picture of a Greek agora. Altogether, you put together the polis, and you put together the acropolis, and you put together the temple and the agora. Altogether, this formed the city-state. Moving on, each city-state had its own government and laws. Each city-state had its own government and laws. I'm going to break it down into two different categories. People that were citizens and people that were officially called non-citizens. People that were citizens and people that were non-citizens. Citizens, very simply, were men. Non-citizens were anybody that was born outside of Greece, anybody that was a woman, anybody that was a child, or anybody that was an enslaved person. An enslaved person is a fancy way of saying slave. Only citizens could own property. Only citizens could hold office. That means they could be a public official. And only citizens could speak in court. So these are rights or responsibilities for citizens. Everyone treasured their polis. It was a personal honor to be part of your polis, and you were very faithful to your polis. And this is going to turn into wars and fights and arguments between different polises, or between different cities, because they had so much pride in their own. There were two very, very important Greek city-states that we're going to cover and talk about in my class this quarter. First one's going to be Sparta. Sparta had the strongest army. Sparta had the strongest army in Greece. The second one is Athens, and Athens has the strongest navy in all of Greece. They both developed very differently. There's a map of some of the city-states that we'll be covering. Hopefully you can identify a few things on this map, such as this, which is what? Good. There's a little city right here called what on the way to the Black Sea? Good. And hopefully you know what this area is, and you might even remember what this sea is, and this is the sea that starts with an A, and you can fill that in on your own. For practice, define for me what is polis. Define for me what is acropolis. And define for me what agora is. There's your answers. Hopefully yours match up. What areas generally made up each city-state? What areas made up each city-state? Give you a second to write that down, or come up with your answer. The answer being farms, fields, orchards around the Acropolis, and agora at the foot of the Acropolis. Last question, what rights did Greek citizens have? Now, first question is, which rights do you want to use there? Hopefully you just said this one. So which rights did Greek citizens have? What were their rights and responsibilities? There's your answer. They could vote, they could own property, they could hold public office, and they could speak in court. And that's where we're going to stop for now.